children, it's Grandma Carla with more of our missionary stories with the Millers, and we are reading The Miracle from the Meadow. And the miracle from the meadow is from Romania. Okay, and here is the picture of where they're talking, at least they say, yes. Here is Romania. Okay, so this is the continent of Africa down here, and here is Asia, and Romania is right there. Okay, the miracle from the meadow. Just look at that meadow full of flowers, Margaret exclaimed in German. Yes, they are beautiful, Amy Bontrager replied in the same language. Austria is a lovely country with all of these rolling hills and mountains. I'd like to stop and pick some, the German lady chattered on. Do you think we could? They would make such a beautiful fall bouquet. Should we? Amy murmured in English to her husband David. I suppose we could stop for a little, David Bontrager answered. No one will mind if Margaret picks a few wildflowers out in the field. But we can't stay long if we are going to cross the Romanian border before night. He brought the car to a stop beside the country road, and the two women got out, while Amy and their German friend Margaret moved happily through the field of flowers. David sat idly in the driver's seat of the rented car. Like speedy birds, his thoughts were soon far away, far across the ocean to his home in Indiana. We are a long way from home, David mused. For many years, David Bontrager, an American minister, had felt a special concern for the persecuted Christians in the communist nations of Europe. If only there was something we Christians in America could do to help them, he had thought, and now God had shown him a way. Working together with a Christian mission in West Germany, David had begun taking trips into the communist countries of Hungary, Romania, and Russia. As an American tourist, it was not too difficult for him to get in. Once he entered a country, he did all that he could to encourage the Christians there. Often he preached for them. Usually, his luggage contained many Bibles, tracts, and other items that were forbidden or hard to find behind the Iron Curtain. On this trip, he had a suitcase loaded with gifts which would be helpful to poor Christian families in Romania. The sound of voices outside the car brought David back to the present. Look at my flowers! Margaret was crying out happily in German, and Amy was laughing. She sure picked a big bunch. What kind of flowers are they, I wonder? I sure don't know, David grinned, eyeing the fluffy top stalks. They look sort of like dandelions back home in the spring when they go to seed. If we don't look out, they'll scatter fuzz all over the seat. Put them in the trunk, Amy advised Margaret. Lay them on top of the suitcases and they should be all right. Little did David know, as he carefully lowered the lid of the trunk over the strange bouquet, how God would soon be using these dried flowers to protect the three missionaries from danger. The travelers crossed the border between Austria and Hungary with no trouble, and spent most of that day driving through Hungary. The Romanian border, though, was the danger spot. As they drove through the small Hungarian village where they planned to cross the border into Romania, David and Amy felt rather tense and anxious. No matter how many times we do this, it always scares me, David murmured to his wife. We are driving right into the hands of the communists, into a country where our brethren in Christ are persecuted. The guards usually seem very polite to tourists, but if they knew about everything that we have in our suitcases. He left the sentence unfinished. We are doing the Lord's work and we are in his hands, Amy encouraged quietly. Let's keep praying. That's the best we can do. There's the place, Margaret said softly in German. Ahead of the travelers, a stout barrier blocked the street. Beside it stood a grim guardhouse with an uniformed man in the doorway and another guard visible through a small window. Breathing one last quick prayer, David drove slowly up to the station and stopped. The border guard had strolled over to David's window, and he did not smile. Hard-faced and stern, he wore the uniform of the Romanian military police. "How many?" he asked brusquely. "Just the three of us," David replied. As he handed over the passports, he tried not to look at the ominous bulge of the officer's gun. The guard examined the 3 passports while the travelers waited quietly. "What is your purpose in coming to Romania?" he questioned. "We are on our way to visit friends in Romania," David answered as pleasantly as he could. "Do you have anything to declare?" was the next question. "Well, we have money and each of us has a watch, and here's my camera," David began. "No drugs, no liquor?" the guard asked. David shook his head. "No." Grunted the guard. He bent and peered in the window of the back seat. "Everybody get out," he snapped. Soon both guards were searching the inside of the car, while David, Amy, and Margaret stood beside it, trying not to look worried. "Now, the trunk," the first guard told David at last. With the keys in his hand, David opened the trunk of the car. And here is the picture of them standing outside while the guard is inspecting the car. "Open one of those suitcases," the guard ordered. "Certainly," David answered politely. Maybe he will only look inside one and not the rest, he thought hopefully. 2 suitcases lay side by side in the trunk, and David reached for the one which held only the Bontrager's clothing and personal things. The guard leaned close to look as David lifted the lid. "No, not this one," he barked suddenly. "I want to see inside that suitcase." Gesturing with one heavy hand, he pointed to the other suitcase. Margaret's dried bouquet lay on top, but inside, David's heart sank. Inside that suitcase were the dangerous items, Christian literature, and gifts for the struggling Christian brothers and sisters of Romania. What would this officer do when he found the forbidden things? "Open that suitcase," the guard repeated, and there was nothing to do but obey. Nervously, David dropped the lid of the suitcase he had already opened. Whoosh! A puff of wind, created by the falling lid, swept through the dry bouquets where it decorated the top of the other suitcase. Suddenly, the air was full of flying fluff and downy seeds as the bouquet flew apart right into the face of the officer. "Phew!" sputtered the astonished guard, blinking and waving both hands in front of his face. Achoo! He sneezed violently, scattering more seeds in all directions. "My flowers!" gasped Margaret, looking like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. David wanted to laugh, but of course he did not dare. "I am so sorry, sir," he apologized. "You must be allergic to weeds like this. Shall I—" "No, no," the guard answered impatiently, turning away to blow his nose. "I have seen quite enough. Just close your trunk and you may go." As the travelers drove through Romania, they enjoyed a good laugh over their narrow escape. "Too bad about your bouquet, Margaret," David chuckled. "I surely didn't mean to scatter it apart, but the Lord used it to safely get us through. Of all the ways God has protected us on our trips, I think this was the funniest." So, the Lord can use anything to take care of his children. In this case, I think probably he prompted them to stop and pick the flowers that he knew he would use to save them once they got there. But that is really a neat story. This is the little historical note. This incident happened during the 1970s on one of David Bontrager's trips to Romania. In those days, Hungary, Romania, and Russia were communist dictatorships where Christians lived lives of poverty and suffering. The L12-Missionary mission in Germany was made up of Christians who had escaped from these communist countries. David Bontrager made many trips to Europe to work with the L12-Missionary mission. He carried many Bibles and tracts into the countries where Christians were not free. On the trip mentioned in this story, he was also carrying many small items, such as watches, which the Christians in Romania could sell for money to live on. In 1971, David Bontrager started a missionary organization, Jesus to the Iron Curtain. This mission is still operating today, but its name has been changed to Christian Mission Charities. David Bontrager died in 1989. And that is a really cool story about how God protects his children. And this is Grandma Carla, and I love you.